flash of cameras lit up the ballroom as Madison Carter strode straight toward the man in the thrift store blazer. Ethan Cole froze, a paper plate of hors d'oeuvres in his hand. She leaned in, her perfume sharp and defiant, and whispered, "Smile like you're my husband. Right now." He blinked once, read her eyes, and gave her a warm, steady smile. Not for the cameras, but for her. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Ethan didn't know why she chose him, but he knew trouble when he saw it. Madison's grip on his arm was tight, almost trembling. "Play along," she murmured, still smiling for the cameras. "Got it," he said calmly. "How long are we married for?" "Until I say stop." He guided her away from a swarm of reporters, subtly shielding her from the flashbulbs. "You look like you need rescuing," he said quietly. "And you look like you know how," she replied, a hint of relief in her tone. From the corner of his eye, Ethan caught a caterer struggling with a tray. Without breaking stride, he steadied the kid, murmuring, "You're good. Keep going." Madison noticed. Her expression softened just slightly. Then a deep, commanding voice cut through the music. "Madison." Her father, William Carter, stood at the edge of the crowd, eyes narrowing at Ethan. "Dad," she said smoothly, "this is my husband, Ethan." Ethan's handshake was firm. "Nice to meet you, sir." William Carter's jaw tightened, but the cameras were still rolling. He gave Ethan the kind of handshake that measured a man's worth in a single squeeze. Ethan didn't flinch. "I wasn't aware you'd married," William said smoothly, his politician smile never wavering. "That's because you weren't supposed to be," Madison replied, her voice calm but edged with steel. "Tonight's about the charity, not my personal life." Ethan could feel the tension humming between father and daughter, like an electric wire pulled too tight. "If it helps," he said lightly, "I make a great +1. I even fixed the projector earlier." Madison's lips twitched, almost a smile. William's eyes, however, sharpened like glass. "Enjoy your evening, husband," he said, then stepped away to greet a cluster of donors. The moment he was out of earshot, Madison exhaled slowly. "You just bought me at least an hour of peace." "Happy to help," Ethan said, "but I have to ask, why me?" She hesitated, scanning the room. "Because you were the only man here looking at the exits instead of the cameras. And because I knew you wouldn't ask for anything in return." "Guess that makes me predictable," he said with a half smile. Madison shook her head. "Number it makes you safe." They were interrupted by the sudden arrival of Graham Lockwood, all slick hair and self-importance. "Madison," he drawled, "I didn't know you were bringing a guest." Or husband, was it? His smirk lingered on Ethan like a challenge. "Yeah," Ethan said evenly. "And you are. Someone who's been in this family's plans a lot longer than you," Graham replied, leaning in just a fraction too close to Madison. Ethan stepped forward, not aggressively, but enough that Graham had to take half a step back. "Plans change." Madison looked between them, and for the first time that night, a genuine smile curved her lips. The music swelled in the background, a string quartet playing something elegant and utterly out of place, with the tension at their table. Madison held her champagne flute delicately, but Ethan could see the faint tremor in her fingers. He didn't know if it was anger, nerves, or both. But she was trying hard not to let anyone else notice. Graham Lockwood lingered like an unwanted shadow, still smiling that smug, self-assured smile. "You know, Madison, he said, swirling his whiskey. Your father and I were just discussing how much smoother things would be if we merged our visions. Carter Innovations and Lockwood Holdings, married in business and perhaps in real life. Madison's jaw tightened. Graham, I've told you before, my life is not for sale. Graham leaned in, lowering his voice. It's not just about you, Maddie. This is about your father's legacy, about stability. His eyes flicked to Ethan, full of condescension. I can offer that, can he? Ethan's instinct was to laugh, but instead he set his glass down and looked Graham in the eye. You know, stability isn't about bank accounts or last names. It's about showing up when you say you will, about keeping promises, about treating people like they matter, even when there's nothing in it for you. Something in Ethan's tone cut through Graham's smugness for a split second, but the mask returned almost instantly. Cute speech, Graham said, but you're out of your depth here, pal. Before Ethan could reply, Madison's father's voice boomed across the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats for tonight's program. Madison took Ethan's arm, her grip firmer now. As they walked toward their assigned table, one much closer to the stage than Ethan would have ever chosen, she whispered, Thank you for not punching him. Tempting, though, Ethan murmured back, earning a brief, genuine laugh from her. The lights dimmed, and William Carter took the stage, commanding the room with the ease of a man who had spent decades bending it to his will. He spoke of innovation, charity, and the company's future, his words polished and deliberate. Then he shifted, gesturing toward Madison. And now, William announced, the woman who will carry Carter Innovations into the next generation, my daughter, Madison Carter. Applause erupted. Madison rose, but Ethan noticed the flicker of hesitation in her eyes. He stood too, not to follow, but to stand beside her chair for just a moment, catching her gaze. You've got this, he said softly. She took a deep breath, nodded, and made her way to the podium. The spotlight hit her, washing her in white light. For a moment, she looked every bit the poised businesswoman the crowd expected. Then her voice came, clear, steady, but with an edge that wasn't in the script. Thank you, Madison began. Tonight is about the children this foundation serves. Kids who face challenges most of us can't imagine, yet somehow find the courage to keep going. They remind me every day that real strength isn't measured in numbers or status or the size of your last deal. Ethan noticed her father's smile tighten ever so slightly. It's measured, Madison continued, in compassion, in showing up for people when they need you most, even if it costs you something. And sometimes, it's in taking a risk on someone the world might underestimate. Her eyes drifted, just for a heartbeat, toward Ethan. The applause was warmer now, more personal. Madison wrapped up her speech with a call to action for the charity, earning a standing ovation from several tables. She stepped down from the stage with controlled grace, but when she returned to their table, her fingers brushed against Ethan's, lingering for half a second longer than necessary. William leaned in from across the table, voice low and sharp. That wasn't the direction we discussed. Madison met his gaze without flinching. I know. Graham smirked as if enjoying the family tension, but Ethan caught Madison's slight lean toward him. Silent confirmation that she wasn't alone in this room anymore. As dessert plates arrived, a photographer approached. Can we get a shot of the happy couple? Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but Madison was already smiling. Of course. She slipped her arm through his, her hand resting lightly on his chest. The flash went off, And in that moment, Ethan realized she wasn't pretending as much as she had been earlier. There was still an act in play, sure. But there was also something else. A spark, a silent thank you. And maybe, just maybe, a beginning. The event finally wound down, the last of the applause fading into the soft hum of conversations and clinking glassware. Most guests drifted toward the coat check or lingered near the bar, networking in quiet, polished voices. Madison was still seated, tracing her finger along the rim of her untouched dessert plate, while Ethan stood nearby, scanning the room the way a man does when he's half expecting trouble. Trouble didn't make him wait. William Carter's shadow stretched across the table before he arrived, Graham Lockwood in tow like a loyal hound with an expensive haircut. The elder Carter's smile was polite for the room, but sharp enough to cut glass up. Close. "Madison," he said. A word. "Alone." "I'm fine here," she replied, her tone deceptively calm. William's eyes flicked to Ethan. "I think we both know this conversation isn't for outsiders." Ethan's gut said to walk away. His chest said to stay. Madison made the decision for him. "If it involves my personal life, and you've already involved the press, then Ethan stays." The corner of William's mouth twitched, irritation barely contained. "Very well. But remember, appearances are everything in our world. Bringing an unknown into a night like this sends a message." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Sometimes the message is the point." Graham scoffed. "You have no idea how this world works, do you?" Ethan turned to him, his voice even. "You're right. I don't own a penthouse or a golf membership. But I know how to read a room. And I saw Madison's face when she asked for help. Whatever was about to happen wasn't for her benefit." Graham stepped forward, his expensive cologne filling the space between them. "You think you're her hero because you played pretend for a night? You're a prop, Cole, a distraction." Ethan didn't blink. Better a distraction than a liability. Madison's lips curved into the faintest smile, but her father's patience was visibly fraying. "Enough," William said. "Madison, you're my daughter. I've worked my entire life to build a name and a company that will stand for generations. Aligning yourself with Lockwood is a strategic necessity, not a choice. And aligning myself with someone I don't trust is exactly why I am making it a choice." She shot back. "You've spent years making deals without asking how they'd affect me. Not this time." William's eyes hardened, the warmth gone. "And what do you think this," he gestured toward Ethan, "is going to accomplish?" Madison glanced at Ethan, then back to her father. "It accomplishes exactly what I needed tonight. I wasn't cornered into a headline. I wasn't paraded around like a piece of leverage. And I had someone at my side who actually listened to me instead of talking over me." The words landed like a gavel strike. William's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." Madison leaned forward, her voice quiet but strong. "I'd rather make my own mistakes than live with someone else's." For a moment, the air between them was so taut that Ethan could almost hear it humming. Then William straightened, smoothing his tuxedo jacket, and nodded toward Graham. "We'll revisit this later." They turned to leave, but Graham couldn't resist a final jab. "Enjoy your moment, Cole. It won't last." Ethan didn't take the bait. He simply stepped aside, letting them pass. But his eyes stayed on Graham's till the man looked away first. Once they were gone, Madison let out a breath she'd been holding for minutes. "You, didn't have to stay through that." "I know," Ethan said, pulling out her chair so she could stand. "But I wanted to." They walked together toward the exit. the crowd thinning enough that the noise dropped to a soft murmur. As they passed the coat check, Madison paused and looked up at him. "Do you want to get out of here without the driver?" Ethan raised a brow. "You have a driver?" She smiled faintly. "He's fine for public exits, but I feel like taking a walk. You game?" He glanced down at his worn shoes, then at her $1,000 heels. "You might regret that choice in about 6 blocks. Maybe. But I think I can handle it." Outside, the cold night air bit at their cheeks. The city glittered around them. Traffic lights, shop windows, and the faint echo of music from a bar across the street. Madison walked beside him, still holding her heels in one hand, her stride unhurried for the first time all night. "So," Ethan said after a few quiet blocks, "was that the worst public confrontation you've had with your dad?" "Not even close," she admitted, "but it was the first one where I didn't feel completely alone." They stopped at a crosswalk. Madison looked over at him, her expression softer now, less guarded. "Why did you say yes? You didn't know me. You could have just walked away." Ethan thought about Lily, about the way his daughter looked at him when she was scared, how she always seemed to know he'd do whatever it took to make her feel safe. Because I've seen that look before, and I hate seeing it on anyone. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer before the light changed. When they reached the corner near her building, Madison slowed. "If you hadn't been there tonight," she shook her head, "I don't even want to think about it." Ethan smiled faintly. "You'd have handled it. You're stronger than you think." "Maybe," she said, "but it's nice to have backup." He nodded once. "Anytime." A small silence followed, comfortable this time, before she said, "Ethan, would you come by the foundation tomorrow? I think I owe you lunch, and maybe—" She hesitated. "I could use your take on a few things." He shrugged lightly. "Sure, as long as it's not one of those power lunches where they serve art on a plate." She laughed, really laughed this time. No promises. As she stepped inside her building, she turned back once more. "And Ethan?" "Yeah. Thanks for smiling." The door closed softly behind her, leaving Ethan alone on the sidewalk with a faint echo of her words in the cold night air. And for reasons he didn't entirely understand yet, he found himself smiling too. Morning sunlight spilled through the front windows of Carter Innovations headquarters, bouncing off the polished marble floors. Ethan paused just inside the lobby, his thrift store blazer looking even more out of place in the corporate cathedral than it had in the ballroom the night before. He'd thought about turning around twice on the way here, but Madison's voice, "I could use your take on a few things," kept him walking toward the reception desk. The receptionist, immaculate in a cream blouse, looked up with polite curiosity. "Can I help you?" Ethan Cole. I'm here to see Madison Carter. Mr. Cole." Madison's voice came from behind him, warm and confident. She swept into the lobby in a tailored navy dress, hair loose over her shoulders. She was holding 2 paper coffee cups. "You're early. I like that." She handed him one. Wasn't sure if this was a 5 minutes early kind of crowd or a wait in the hallway for an hour kind of crowd, Ethan said. Madison grinned. "Depends on who you're meeting. You're with me, so neither." She led him through a glass-walled corridor into a smaller meeting room overlooking the city. "I meant it about lunch," she said, setting her coffee down. "But before we get to that, I have a problem, and I think you might see it differently than anyone in this building." Ethan leaned against the table. "I'm listening." She slid a folder toward him. Inside were proposals for the next quarter's charity budget. numbers, charts, and photos of kids with mobility devices. My father wants to cut funding for our outreach program to free up capital for a corporate partnership with Lockwood Holdings. Graham? Ethan asked. She nodded. He calls it strategic growth. I call it gutting the heart of what we do. Ethan flipped through the pages. And you can't just veto him? Not without 3 board members backing me, she said. Right now, I've got one. He studied her for a long moment. You want to win them over? Yes. And I want to do it without letting my father think this is about my personal life. Which means I need someone who can speak to them without it looking like it came from me. Ethan chuckled softly. You want me to walk into a boardroom full of people in $1,000 suits and tell them why they're wrong? Madison's eyes held his. You told my father to give me space in a ballroom full of cameras. This will be easier. 2 hours later, Ethan found himself in a boardroom big enough to hold his entire apartment building. The long mahogany table gleamed, flanked by men and women in crisp suits. William Carter sat at the head, flanked by Graham on one side and Madison, composed but tense, on the other. William's gaze landed on Ethan. Mr. Cole, I wasn't aware you'd be joining us. I'm here at Madison's invitation, Ethan said evenly, just to share a perspective. The meeting rolled on. Presentations, projected earnings, market expansions. Then came the proposal to cut the outreach program. William called for discussion. Before anyone could speak, Ethan leaned forward. I'm not here to tell you how to run your company, he began. But I've seen what your outreach program does. I've seen kids take their first steps with braces you paid for. I've seen parents cry because they didn't have to choose between a mortgage payment and their child's mobility. You cut this program, you're not just moving numbers on a spreadsheet. You're closing doors that can't be reopened. One board member shifted uncomfortably. Another glanced at Madison. Ethan continued, his voice steady but carrying weight. I get that there's money to be made in partnerships. But if you can't balance profit with the reason this company exists, then what's the point? You'll make your quarterly numbers, sure, but you'll lose the thing that made people trust you in the first place. Silence settled over the room. Then one of the older board members, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, spoke up. I'd like to table the partnership vote until we revisit the budget with the outreach program intact. A second board member agreed, then a third. Madison met Ethan's eyes, her relief barely concealed behind a professional nod. William's jaw tightened, but he masked it quickly. Very well. We'll reconvene on this matter. As the meeting adjourned, Graham brushed past Ethan with a glare. Don't get comfortable. This isn't over. Didn't think it was, Ethan replied. In the hallway, Madison caught up to him. You didn't just help me keep the program, you gave me the leverage I needed to keep fighting. Ethan shrugged. Seemed worth fighting for. She hesitated, then smiled. You're dangerous,